which then the number two, Sentimental Value, edged it out by 1 point. Um, and I suppose what's interesting is that I would say that it has a decent bit in common with Life of Chuck, but then it also has plenty that's not in common with that as well. It's sort of in the sense that it's exploring like fundamental, as much as you might be like, well, come on, it's not that existential, right? By comparison, where Life of Chuck gets quite existential, I think that like Sentimental Value is like quite multifaceted in a way that can make it almost tricky to hone in on exactly the singular point that it's trying to make, because it feels like it's trying to present a more holistic um presentation and interpretation of like why people become the way that they are, why they clash with each other, how they can sort of be driven apart, and then what are the opportunities
It's
to draw them back together.
particularly bold and unique to show us multi-generational, like a bloodline traced all the way back to trauma that relates to war, and that you can
World War
still
Two,
see the
yeah.
remnants of it, like, and the consequences of those lives that have been lived.
Well,
Fascinating to
it's
watch.
the house. The house is like the framing device for that. The house is a persistent element of the story. Obviously, we mainly see it as it exists in the present, um, sort of hollowed out because the mother has died. And sort of that is the reason why all of this is even happening. It's the reason why Stellan Skarsgård's sort of been brought back, along with what he sees as an opportunity to create a film with his daughter. But we jump back to see the house when these two daughters were growing up together, and Stellan Skarsgård fighting with his wife, and that there was clearly like friction there, namely seeming to spawn from the fact that he was achieving a lot. He was a respected and talented filmmaker, and that maybe the family was dragging him down, which obviously leaves you a lot to think about as you go forward. But then it's like, yeah, jumping back even further to his childhood, how his mother was essentially taken from him, and that starts to explain a lot about like why he became the way that he was. And I suppose something that I think is kind of interesting is it feels like typically what you would be seeing is more of an exploration of his failings as a father, and sort of the consequences that it has had on his daughters. But then like the longer the film goes on, it's like you're sort of almost front loaded with general suspicions and reasons to believe that he's failed pretty hard, and that maybe he's not like a great person. But the longer it goes on, there's more of like a, okay, now we understand why you became the way that you are, and also we start to understand that you are able to express yourself in a really potent and important way through art. And then sort of realizing that his eldest daughter, who you could view as sort of the main character of this story, is quite flawed herself in a way that's detrimental to plenty of people around her, and that she shares a lot more in common with her father than she might think, and ultimately leading to the conclusion that, oh damn, like he actually knows you. He like knows you at your core, as reflected by this story that he's written that he wants her to star in, that's certainly for her. And then when she eventually decides that she wants to read this script because she didn't want to do it, and then Stellan Skarsgård got Elle Fanning in to sort of play the role, and she tries her hardest, but it's
God
just
bless
not
her.
slotting into place because it's clearly for his daughter. And then she sees it, she reads it, and her sister reads it, and they realize like, holy shit, it's not just that he's a talented artist, which is something that they sort of already recognize, but like he knows you for all of his flaws, for all of the distance. Like he knows you, which means that you know him. And this is going to be this is like the beginning of being able to reconnect through creating art together. And I mean, the fact that it's punctuated by they built a set that is meant to look exactly like their family home, but it's not their home. It's on a set. There's blue screens around it. They've like taken it. It feels like the clearest, if you want to say thematic core, taken the generational trauma, all of their conflict, all of their sort of flaws and issues, taking it and channeling it into something new that's meaningful to them and is going to be meaningful to other people. Pretty profound, very inspiring, very uplifting. Also feels very life affirming. I think it's pretty wonderful as a message.
One, and like I said, just the meta aspect of like a sort of celebration of art and how important it is to humanity, sort of for expression. The final look they share at the end of the movie, I just got this immense sense of like they can communicate now because of art. They're able to actually like connect properly,
and this will mend the bridges, and it's going to be better for them. It's going to be better for everybody around them. Like, art is a bridge between worlds in a sense, because so much of what can explain their differences is the fact that they belong to different generations. She knows things about him. She knows the story, and so does her sister as well. But like, the more that they start to learn about that, the more that they almost start to let him in and sort of like recognize him as like a fully fledged human being with his own history and his own explanations for why he is the way that he is. Like, that allows that door to sort of be opened up to then sort of be fully thrown open through creating art together. And that, for the longest time in the film, it's like both of them are essentially kind of denying this is an opportunity. Obviously, in the case of Stellan Skarsgård, he tried to get it, but she wasn't interested. Yeah. So then he finds a new actress to do it. And I really enjoy like Elle Fanning's role in this story as kind of like a person who is brought in and kind of participates in this and makes like a real effort to she wants to make a real movie. She wants to kind of be like a real actress, and she actually kind of has the ability to do it. And because it feels like in one sense you might think like, oh, she's going to be kind of shit at it, right? But it's like, no, she has a potential herself to create good art, but this just isn't it. This is clearly not the movie that
she
she's
recognizes
meant to be making.
What's happening, and it's so unfortunate because she basically just like recuses herself, being like, I am not the right person for this role. And I felt something for that, and again a more meta sense of like, this film is a film about this film being made in a way, because this probably was a lot of the processes for this film being made. Whoever came up with every aspect of it probably had a lot of their personal life poured into it, and at the same time, it's just like recognizing what elements need to be in what places. And it's a good choice of actress, right? Because she's famous enough that you'll recognize her, and a lot of these projects have to pull a name in order to get them some more attention. But that she's like, I appreciate your work and I appreciate your interest in me, but it's like, I'm not the person for this. Like, the script doesn't match. She's asking about like the accent at certain points, practicing certain scenes, and disagreements on how exactly certain things should go.
Are we meant to be doing this in English, or should we be doing it in Norwegian, or should I be doing it with a Norwegian accent?
Yeah.
And all of it is like, yeah, this is the product of trying to slot something into place that just can't, because this is about these two and their family, and she can't be a part of it. But it feels like pointing to her as a character and being like multifaceted and not a cliche is very much applicable for everybody, because I mentioned it during sort of the opening blurb all that time ago, but the dialogue in this film is excellent, and I think what I love about it the most is just how much sort of lies under the surface. You view it as like an iceberg, right? Everything that they say, like, you just get such a strong impression of all of this baggage beneath it that explains why they speak to each other the way that they do, why they make these choices, even if they're not necessarily good for them. And like, what you end up with as a consequence of that, if you're specifically referring to our three main characters, Stellan Skarsgård and his two daughters, are three people who feel so very well realized, and so thoroughly believable, and so believable as being who they are based on what we learn about them and their experiences and a lot of their like sort of, I guess, what you could call their like core traumatic events, and how and the fact that they're all ultimately bound together by the fact that it is like a consequence of the generation prior and the generation prior, and the events that befell each respective generation, and the circumstances that they themselves they find themselves in. It's just very expertly crafted, very deliberately crafted. I mean, even down to just the fact that like the house, what a great idea as sort of your binding symbolic element of the story, that the house is like the microcosm of the story, sort of encapsulates it at its core. This thing that persists but changes and has like a memory and a history of its own that lingers and is passed down. to then ultimately essentially take that, use that, and then put it into art.
It's a good
So
movie.
good, man.
Hyper recommend.
It is. It's really good. Excellent performance.
We're in the hyper recommend segment.
Yeah, this is like, you should see this. You should absolutely see this. I don't really care what your preferences are for movies. You should see this.